Welcome to Tools for Better Sleep. I'm just reading the screen here. Welcome to Tools for Better Sleep, Healthy Minds workshop live stream. If you haven't seen any of the previous live streams that I've done, you'll want to check out the slides. I've located a little square at the bottom of each slide. I think I got it in every single one this time, where you can actually download those slides. I made a tiny URL so it's easy to type in. You can get all the slides for the presentation there, and then any links that I reference in the presentation you can easily download. So as we get started, just a couple of things to let you know. So this workshop is being hosted by me and provided as a collaboration between a couple of different organizations at Utah State University. So the first is Counseling and Psychological Services, also known as CAPS. The next is the College of Education and Human Services. And the last is the School of Graduate Studies. So these three organizations at USU collaborated together to create my position, which is the College of Education Embedded Psychologist. And part of that role, in addition to these workshops that I'm providing every Friday at 3:30, with the exception of fall break and Thanksgiving, is that I also provide counseling for graduate students in the College of Education and Human Services. So a lot of the graduate students in our programs may be hesitant to seek counseling at CAPS because they may want to do some of their clinical training there, or they may have friends doing clinical training there. And so my position is here to kind of provide a little bit more privacy for students that are in that position. So I provide services to any graduate student in the College of Education, and to keep it kind of separate from the training program at Counseling and Psychological Services, my office is located in the education building instead of at CAPS. And I am not part of the training team at CAPS. So it gives a little bit of a separation and distance for those students. Another quick note that I want to mention, this workshop is, educative in nature. It's not intended to be a substitute for mental health care. And so if you or somebody that you know is in need of help, please seek out a qualified therapist. I personally believe everybody should go to therapy. All right. So today we're going to talk about how to get better sleep. And the first thing that I want to mention, to me, it feels like it shouldn't need mentioning, but it does need mentioning. And I know this from my personal experience and as well from having been a therapist for quite some time now. We can struggle to allow ourselves to get adequate sleep. Certainly students and graduate students, people with demanding professions, parents. If you have a lot on your plate, it can be easy to let sleep kind of be the last thing on the priority list because there's so much that needs to get done. But sleep is essential. And not only is it essential for you and your health, which should be reason enough to get good sleep, but it's also essential for being able to function at school, function in work. So a couple of the benefits of getting adequate sleep on a regular basis: it boosts your immunity, so it makes you better able to fight off disease. It decreases the risk of heart disease and diabetes and other serious illnesses, but those are a couple major ones. It also has the effect of reducing stress and improving your mood, helps you think clearly and do well at work and in school. It often improves relationships, partly through helping you be more, level-headed, clear thinking, regulate your moods a little better. And it decreases the risk that you will be in an accident or injure yourself somehow. So adults ages 18 to 65 need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. After the age of 65, 7 to 8, not really a big difference there. 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And You may need more than that if any of the following apply to you. So if you're currently fighting off an illness or infection, if you are going through a particularly stressful time in your life right now, if you're pregnant, if you have a chronic illness or autoimmune disorder, sometimes when you're going under certain medical treatments, such as chemo, you may need more sleep for your body to recover. And if you're going through a major life transition. Now, I'm sure this list is not exhaustive, and as you're watching, you may be thinking of other times that you need more sleep. But certainly, these are times that you would definitely need more sleep. A couple of signs that you may not be sleeping enough. If you have any of these going on, sleep might be the culprit here. So if you're drowsy during the day, you're finding that you're often irritable or moody. If you're gaining weight, you're less productive or focused than you normally would be. If you're noticing an increase in your appetite, even that might actually be a sign you're not getting enough sleep, weirdly enough. If your judgment and decision making have been off lately. And finally, if your skin is showing signs like dark circles, dull complexion, sometimes you can really read it on your face. You may have your own individual signs that you're already aware of what shows up for you when you're sleepy. And so I'd encourage you to think about that for a second. What does show up for me when I haven't been sleeping enough? And what are kind of my warning signs that I need to do a better job of getting sleep? I also want to note that there are some signs that are concerning and important to keep in mind that could be a signal that you may have a sleep disorder. So if any of these signs apply to you, I would really recommend that you talk about this with your medical care provider. So if you're having trouble falling or staying asleep, not just occasionally, but a significant amount of the time. If after 7 to 9 hours of sleep, you're still tired, I would say, if some of those other conditions that we mentioned on previous slide apply to you, then maybe you don't necessarily need to be concerned. But if none of that's going on and you're still tired after 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that's a good signal. You should talk to somebody. If daytime sleepiness is making it hard for you to function, you're not doing well in school, you're not doing well in work, you're falling asleep during just kind of daily activities, that's a problem. If it's making it hard for you to do self-care, to take care of your home, maybe you've got something going on here that your sleep isn't restful enough. If you snore loudly, you may not be aware of it, but if anybody's around you when you sleep, they may be aware of that. You may also have pauses in your breathing or gasp while sleeping. That can also be a signal that you've got a sleep disorder going on that you need to be evaluated for. If you notice in your legs and arms at night that you have a tingly or crawling sensation that's really irritating you, and it might get better when you move around or when you massage that area, that can be a sign of a sleep disorder. So definitely check in with a medical professional. And finally, if when you first wake up, you find it hard to move. Okay, so now let's get on to the tips for better sleep. And before I get into these, I want to let you know in advance, I'm going to talk about two different kind of categories of tips for better sleep. So the first category is going to be sleep hygiene strategies. And so sleep hygiene is basically good sleep habits. And some of these you may already be aware of, and some of them you probably are not. A lot of research has gone into developing those sleep hygiene guidelines and tips. And these are often the tips that if you went to a therapist, for example, saying, I'm having trouble sleeping, these are often the tips that might be their starting point in terms of treatment. So they're behavioral remedies that can help improve your sleep, and they can be done instead of medication if they're working for you, and if not, then in addition to medication and also maybe therapy if you're some of what's going on for you is stuff that maybe should be addressed by a therapist. So they're just some ideas, some starting points to give a try. If you're finding you're really, really struggling with sleep, I still recommend that you talk to a healthcare professional about what's going to work for you and let them kind of brainstorm with you. you can work on this sleep hygiene and simultaneously be getting some help with that. All right, and then the anxiety management strategies, they're not specific to sleep, although I've chosen a few here that are going to be particularly helpful with sleep. Okay. So starting out with the first of the sleep hygiene habits. So it's important to wear yourself out during the day. So one thing that can be really, really hard to do, but is super important, is if you find that you're really tired during the day, it's so tempting to just take a nap and to adjust your activities. Like maybe you don't exercise, maybe you don't do housework, maybe you just do a little less than you normally would do. It's actually a really bad idea to do that because it just reinforces the insomnia, So if you're tired and then you do less in the day, then you're less worn out and you're less likely to sleep. So it's better if you can just push through the tired and wear yourself out, do your regular activities because you're more likely to be tired and sleep better that night. The next thing would be to get regular exercise. So you don't want to do this right before bedtime because for most people, exercising too close to bedtime is going to result in you just having a lot of endorphins going and being kind of overly energized, and then you'll have worse insomnia. But do it way earlier in the day. And doing so earlier in the day can help you sleep better at night. Also, it's very important to avoid naps. It's better if you can do no naps at all, but if you have to do a nap, keep it 10 minutes or less. The next thing I'll mention is routine is important, and it's important in a couple of ways. So if you can get up at the same time every single day, yes, including weekends, I know none of us like to follow that, but it really does help. This can help your body kind of adjust to having a regular schedule, and it'll be better about sticking to that schedule if you're better about sticking to that schedule. The next thing that I'll recommend is creating your own personalized sleep ritual. And so for most people, this might include like washing your face, brushing your teeth, turning down the lights, whatever the things are that you like to do at the end of your day. Maybe you like to read a chapter in a book. Figure out what those are for you and keep it consistent. Do the same things every single night before you go to bed. Basically, what you're setting up here is a signal to your body to say, hey, it's time to get sleepy. It's time to get ready for bed. And so you want to set that up and have it be as routine at the same times, doing the same things as possible. It just makes it so your body kind of just knows it signals it's time to buckle down and go to sleep. I also want to make note that a lot of the time when I'm working with somebody in therapy who's having trouble with sleep, and I recommend this particular strategy to them, when they try it, they come back and oftentimes I hear, well, it takes me a lot longer to go through that whole sleep routine than I had realized. So one of the things I really recommend is start really early with that routine. So sometimes part of the struggle is you're starting that routine at the time when you ought to be going to sleep. So, it wouldn't hurt to do the whole routine and time yourself and see how long it takes and plan accordingly, because it most likely is going to take longer than you think. All right, a couple of other things to note. The things that you take in or don't take in can really can set your body up for good sleep. I'm missing a word in my title here. All right, so you want to eat regular meals and not go to bed hungry. So going to bed hungry can wake you up at night. So it's important that you've got something on your stomach. However, on the flip side, if you eat something heavy or greasy right before you go to bed, first of all, that can contribute to nightmares actually and heartburn. But it also can just wake you up from sleep. So you want to avoid that. It's not good to eat dinner right before sleep. That should be a few hours before you go to sleep. But you should eat a light snack at bedtime. That will definitely help you sleep, help you not wake up from hunger, but also not be heavy on you. And apparently, especially carbohydrates are particularly good for this. All right, the next thing is you want to limit or avoid, if you can, caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol. So alcohol is one that a lot of people think helps with sleep because it can help you fall asleep. So there are people who will try to treat their insomnia with alcohol. But besides all of the negative effects that alcohol can have on your body and the potential for addiction, it also tends to disrupt sleep. So people will have the impression that they slept well because it helps them fall asleep and sometimes be a little more out of it. But actually, they tend to have more disrupted sleep than people who are sober. So don't recommend alcohol before bed. Definitely limit that. Nicotine, of course, is a stimulant drug. Stimulant drugs are all about waking us up. And so if you smoke, really try your best to avoid doing so at night if you're having trouble sleeping. And then finally, of course, caffeine. We all know caffeine is like every tired person's like go-to thing in the morning, a cup of coffee. And that's okay, but minimal caffeine is ideal. If you're having a lot of trouble with anxiety, you can be getting into kind of a negative feedback loop where it's like, okay, well, I'm drinking the caffeine to keep me awake, but then the caffeine is making it harder for me to sleep. And then I'm drinking more caffeine to keep me awake. And then that's making it harder for me to sleep. So limit that as much as possible and definitely cut yourself off after lunch. No more caffeine. And that should help. Okay. Next, I want to talk about just setting the scene for sleep. So a couple of things you can do to kind of get your body and get your bedroom, your space ready. So one great thing you can do is 1 to 2 hours before you're ready to go to sleep, take a hot bath. So a hot bath can help raise your body temperature, which can cause you to feel sleepy as your temperature drops again. Another thing it could be really great for is just de-stressing. I know it's one of my favorite coping skills and self-care tips is to, at the end of a particularly stressful day, just soak in the tub and kind of let all the stress melt away. It's very calming. All right, the next thing is 45 minutes or more before you're going to go to sleep, turn off all screens. I know this is hard to do. It takes a lot of self-discipline, but it makes a big drastic difference. So turn off the TV, turn off the computer, get away from your phone. A couple of things you can also do is dim your lights. So instead of using bright overhead lights, turn those off and turn on dimmer lamps. One of the things that I like to do, I have 2 bedside lamps, one on each side of my bed, and I have a colored lamp in them. And so I'll turn them to like a darker color, like a purple or a red. So it just kind of sets a quieter tone in the room for the last little while that I'm awake. Great way to, and if you do that repeatedly, the same thing again and again, you're getting another cue, another signal to tell your body that you're ready to sleep. It's very important that you train yourself to use the bed only for sleep and sex. Don't watch TV in bed. Don't read. Don't talk on the phone. Don't do your homework there. Don't get on social media. It's easy to do all of that. But what you do when you do that is you basically create an association between your bed and wakefulness. So you're interrupting what we're trying to build by doing those routines. And your body responds to that by being awake when you're in bed. So when you're reading, when you're watching TV, when you're talking on the phone, when you're on social media, sit in a chair. Don't lay in your bed. Okay. Set up your room for optimal sleep. So dark is better. Cool is better for most people. If you tend to get cold in your sleep, have a cold room, but have a warm blanket. Maybe an electric blanket can be really helpful. An electric blanket can also be really helpful if pain is one of the things that keeps you awake at night. So it's something that I highly recommend. Turn on a fan or stick your feet outside the blanket if you're a hot sleeper. Wear a sleep mask. So there's a particular sleep mask that I will often recommend to people that you can get at Bath and Body Works because it has kind of a bubble over the eye. I wish I could remember the name of it, but so your eyelashes don't rub against it. It doesn't put pressure on your eyes. After you've had it on for a bit, you barely notice it's there. And it really does a really great job of blocking out light. If you tend to be disturbed by any kind of noise, use earplugs or turn on a white noise machine. A fan can also double as a white noise machine. Just do things to kind of help block out some of the noise that keeps you up. Sleep only when you're sleepy. So If you are one of the people who maybe you fall asleep okay, but once you're asleep, you end up waking up during the night, there's something you should definitely do. So if you are laying in bed for an hour or more without falling asleep, it's time to get out of bed. Okay. Going back to that idea, we don't want bed to be associated with being awake. Not a good thing. So get out of bed and then do something quiet. So a couple of ideas I can throw out here for you. Just like go into another room, or if you have a chair in your room or even the floor, just don't do it in your bed. Read a book, knit, cross stitch, do something quiet that you can do without having to have a ton of light, no screens, no big loud noises, and nothing too stimulating. And keep doing that until it's hard for you to keep your eyes open. You're just exhausted and falling asleep, and then just go back to bed. If you still can't fall asleep, it's time to ask yourself, okay, is this an anxiety thing going on? And that doesn't always mean that it's, right now there's a specific thing I'm anxious about. It might be kind of background anxiety, like you're just feeling anxious for not a big particular reason, or it might be that you're ruminating, which is just thinking worry thoughts again and again and again, or thinking about all the things that you have to do, that sort of thing, worrying about the future. So I'm going to talk about a couple of skills that can really help if anxiety is what's going on for you. So the first thing I want to say, and I know this is easier said than done, don't worry, this is not the only skill I'm going to mention for anxiety, but is do your best not to panic. Don't watch the clock. It's the worst thing that you can do. So research has shown that the more often you check the clock when you're having trouble sleeping, the more likely you are to be starting to stress yourself out and think about how tired you're going to be tomorrow. And basically what's happening when you're doing that is you're increasing your own anxiety level by thinking all these anxious thoughts and worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow and how terrible you're going to feel. And when we get anxious, we activate the part of our nervous system that's fight, flight, and freeze. That's elevated heart rate, that's anxiousness, and it's the exact opposite of what we need for sleep. What we need for sleep is the other half of our nervous system, the rest and digest half. And so we want to do whatever we can to interrupt that cycle of panic and anxiety that we can get into that can interfere with our sleep. So we'll talk about a couple of the things that can help with that, in addition to not checking the clock. Okay, so the first one I want to mention is progressive muscle relaxation. And we actually have a Healthy Minds workshop coming up, a live stream on October 22nd, where I'll walk you through a progressive muscle relaxation. And then I have it. It looks like it's in white text here, so it's hard to see. But if you click right here, there's a link to a progressive muscle relaxation video that I often will play for my therapy clients that I just particularly like and get a lot of good feedback about. So that's one that you can try as well. So progressive muscle relaxation, by the way, really great for helping you fall asleep. Sometimes people accidentally fall asleep in therapy when I have them do this, actually, if they're particularly tired. It's also great as a regular kind of meditative exercise for managing anxiety. And it just feels phenomenal. Like it can feel almost as good as getting a massage. I highly recommend it. All right, a couple of other things. So breathing exercises, guided imagery, and meditations. You can find loads of these on YouTube with all different voices and accents and music backgrounds or no music. So get on there and just look around and see, which ones you like best. I recently also heard the Headspace app, which is only $10 for the premium version for students, actually has a meditation for pain, for if your pain is interfering with your sleep, and that can be effective. So check that one out. Another thing I've recently discovered is podcasts for sleep. So a few years ago, there was just one that I knew of, and it's called Sleep With Me. And it's this guy named Scooter who he intentionally drones on and tells like very boring stories and gets really tangential. And he speaks in just a boring voice, and it really lulls you to sleep. There are a bunch more like that now, and there are some others that are focused on like they tell you stories to help you go to sleep, others that will do guided meditation, imagery, affirmations. all kinds of cool stuff. So you can check out YouTube. Now, if you do it on YouTube, put it on a screen and put the screen down so there's no light from that screen. Or you can do it on a podcast. Okay. This one is one of my favorites, and it's one you wouldn't have thought of. I certainly wouldn't have thought of as something that helps with sleep, but it absolutely does. And it's scheduled worry. So first, let me back up a bit and talk about why scheduled worry is so effective. So a lot of times, particularly people who are prone to anxiety, just kind of in general, will go through their day trying to suppress and hold back that anxiety. And honestly, a lot of the time, our kind of daily activities require that of us. You can't really function well at work and in school and in your childcare responsibilities if you're feeling all of the anxiety that you may have inside of you. And so we get really good at kind of just suppressing that, holding it down, not feeling it, which is very adaptive, really helpful. But sometimes we're doing so much of that it ends up causing us a problem in our lives, kind of in the other direction of it's just kind of just building up now. It's building up and it's going to overflow. So I like to use the anxiety or the analogy of anxiety being kind of like if you have to pee. So, emotions, they're a biological function that happen in our body. We can literally see the impact of emotion on your hormones, on your brain, on your heart rate, on your skin temperature, sweat. They're a very biological reality, and anxiety is no exception. If you think about it, you can probably identify all kinds of biological signs of anxiety. Okay. So just like when you have to go pee, sometimes you have to have a feeling, you have to have anxiety. Now, if you needed to go pee, but you were at work, or you were taking care of kids, or you were in school, you could put that off for a while. It's not the end of the world if we wait a little bit to go pee, right? It might not be totally pleasant, but sometimes we can put that off for a while. What happens if you continue to put that off and you never come back to it and you never meet your need, though, is you wet yourself and then you have a giant mess. Well, we tend to do that with our anxiety too. It's going to come out. There's going to be a time at which our defenses are down and here comes anxiety. Well, it turns out the time that you're most likely to have that experience of anxiety overflowing will be when you're falling asleep. For not everybody, but many people. So you've been suppressing anxiety all day, you're stressed out, and you're actively putting all this mental and emotional energy into shoving it back so you can focus on work, focus on what you have to do. Then finally you're ready to sleep and you lay down, close your eyes, and boom, here comes all that anxiety. Here comes all that worry, and you can't stop ruminating. So this is a tool that's going to help you not do that, or do less of that at least. And it's called scheduled worry. It's going to sound counterintuitive, but it's one of my clients' favorites. So what you want to do is schedule about 30 minutes that is set just for worry, and set a timer on your watch, on your phone, whatever. Okay. Now you don't want to do this immediately before bed. I would recommend 2+ hours, although there's not research on how soon before bed is acceptable. And for that 30 minutes, what you want to do is get out a pen and paper and make a list of all of the things that you can possibly think of to worry about. And now what you need to do is spend that 30 minutes worrying about everything on your list, all the things that are stressing you out. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes people think of this as, okay, so what I'm doing is I'm putting a limit on how much I'm allowed to worry. We're actually doing the opposite of this. What we're doing is we want to fill up that entire 30 minutes with worry. We're actually making sure that you are giving yourself adequate worry time during your wake time. That's what the goal is here. Okay. So you have to fill up that whole 30 minutes. If your timer's still going and you have run out of worry, then go back and re-worry about things on that list again. I know it's silly, but do it, trust me. Or think of more things you can worry about and add to your list. Now, if on the other hand, your time runs out on your timer, but you still have things to worry about and you're still feeling like you need to worry, then set it for another 30 minutes and fill up that whole 30 minutes. Okay. All right. So the next thing that you want to do is work on kind of challenging some of your anxious thinking that's contributing to you having trouble sleeping. Okay. So first off, you want to reassure yourself. So sometimes the worries that we have at night, this is true for so many of us, they're just our brain being tired and overreacting, kind of going back to what I said before about if you haven't been getting enough sleep, your moods aren't as good. Well, anytime that we're tired, we're just not likely to be in our kind of best frame of mind. So our emotions are feeling bigger. We're less able to kind of regulate them. So try to remind yourself that you've got a tired brain and it may be overreacting to things. And you'll be thinking more clearly in the morning and better able to solve whatever problems you might have to deal with. So if you can, just encourage yourself to save it for morning. You can also do something called decatastrophizing. And I think I actually forgot to link it here, but what I'll do is immediately after I finish this live stream, I'll put the link there. So it'll be there. So if you've already downloaded the slides, you can just go back and download them again and it'll be there. But anyway, it's a worksheet that's to help with kind of getting out of your own way when you tend to think in catastrophic ways. So catastrophizing is when we think the worst thing is probably going to happen. I won't be able to handle it. So catastrophizing when it comes to our sleep might be like, I'm never going to fall asleep. And if I don't fall asleep, then I'm going to fail my test tomorrow, or I'm going to feel terrible at work, or I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to mess that up. So it's just kind of a way to talk yourself down a bit. And that worksheet can be really helpful with that. If the thing you're stressing about is solvable and solvable within like a reasonable amount of time, go ahead and solve it. Or if you think of the solution, write it down, and then boom, you're done. Like just put away that notebook. Okay. And that way it's addressed. Okay. The other thing you can do, it's kind of the opposite of decatastrophizing, but you can go ahead and imagine that the worst possible thing has happened. So let's say, yeah, I don't fall asleep and I'm super tired tomorrow. And then what I want you to do is imagine yourself handling that just fine. So the worst happens, but you're just fine. You get through it. The worst happens and you fail your test. So then you ask the professor for a retake, or you do better on the other ones and balance it out. Or, you do well enough that you get through this class, C's get degrees, if that's this position that we're in, right? And we move on, Will you likely be okay in a year? Probably. So ask yourself that if the worst were to happen. Picture yourself dealing with the worst and getting through it, handling it like a champ, A couple of other things that can be helpful with anxiety. So if you're a reader, read a novel that really gets you in the feels, a lot of emotion to it, because then you'll be engaged with it and it'll kind of distract you away a little bit from the anxiety that you're feeling. And keep reading it till you start getting so sleepy that it's hard for you to even keep reading. Then put the book down, lay down on your bed, close your eyes, and now try to imagine what happens next in this novel and carry that out for as long as you can. Imagine the next chapter and the next and the next until you start to drift off. If you find that you're waking up again, read some more until you get sleepy and you're dozing again. Fall asleep holding it if you need to. You can go back and find your place later. It's no big deal. If nothing else works, so I mentioned before, some people maybe find if there's noise that it keeps them awake. I happen to be the opposite of that. I have to have noise or else I can't sleep. And I think it's because I grew up on a noisy street. So if you're like me and you need some noise, here's a couple of things that you can do. So one thing I want to say is you don't want to have the volume too high on any of these, and you want to not have light. Okay. So you might watch a TV show that you've seen a lot of times. My go-to is The Office. And what I'll do is I'll either put it on my phone and put my phone down on my nightstand so I can't see the light from it, or I'll put it in my iPad and slip my iPad inside I have a leather sleeve that blocks all the light. So I hear the sound, but I can't see it. And then I'll lay down, close my eyes, and I'll try to picture what's happening on the show as I'm listening to it. And it works especially well with a show that you've seen a lot of times because you're not super engaged in the plot line and you have more ability to picture what you're seeing. Another thing that can be helpful is an audiobook. The nice thing with audiobooks, if you use the Audible app, you can set so that it only reads till the end of a chapter, for example, if you want it to. Then you can kind of keep track of where you are somewhat. You can listen to a podcast, public radio like NPR, but you want to be careful about what you're choosing. So don't choose something that has a ton of fluctuation in the voice tone or volume, because that will startle you awake. You need something that's kind of relatively mellow. All right. So if you would like more anxiety management tips like these ones, I just wanted to put a plug in there for the live stream that I'll be doing on October 29th, which is all about anxiety and depression. And we're going to get into a lot more kind of detail about the types of anxious thinking you might have, the types of depressive thinking you might have, and some tools, kind of like that decatastrophizing worksheet that can help you challenge that. I probably will mention the decatastrophizing worksheet as part of it too. And want to just put in a plug for some of the future and actually past as well, live streams that we have. So we've already covered self-care and burnout and compassion fatigue. Today we covered tools for better sleep. Coming up after fall break, I'm not doing anything for the Friday of fall break, which is next week, but the week after we'll do that progressive muscle relaxation together. So, plan to take your time and do some progressive muscle relaxation with me. And then after that, we'll get into Your Mind Lies to You, challenging anxious and depressive thinking. All right. Thanks for joining. If you were able to join me, and if not, and you're watching this later, thank you anyway. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks.